Hello everyone. Today we are watching another Topher Field video. This time it's called Let's Take a Step Back for a Second and Get Some Perspective. It's Topher Project episode number 200.
News does not sell. And sadly, it seems to be true on YouTube as well, which is why there is so much negative clickbait everywhere you look. But I'm going to try and prove that maxim wrong today by sharing a good news video and hoping that a bit of good news can go viral just as much as bad. Because the good news is that life is good. Actually, life is great if you zoom out a little bit, out of all the minutiae and the noise, and you take a look at the grand sweep of history. The recent past of the human race has been fantastic, and actually the future of the human race looks great too, if we don't allow governments and power-mad globalists to stuff it up for the rest of us. This is the 200th official episode of the Topher Project. Actually, it's more like the 250th, but I didn't used to give numbers to my interviews early on, so they didn't actually count in the cumulative total, but whatever. This one gets the number 200, and I thought this would be a great time to bring you some great news, some good news about the world, because honestly, things are getting better. And I mean, like, way better, in really meaningful ways. And it's true to say that the world has never been better than what it is right now. I know, there's a lot of fear-mongering in the...
I am really interested to hear what he is going to say about this. Well, obviously, if he's going to be bringing in rising seas, I'm not really afraid of that. I know that a lot of that is mumbo-jumbo, but interested to see where he's going to go with this. Yeah, because he does have a different perspective from me, especially in terms of Trump. I am not somebody who is a Trump hater that foams at the mouth when they hear of him, but I am somebody who just generally doesn't trust him, just as I don't trust every other politician.
Media and prophets of doom who want your donations so that they can save the lesser spotted newt from the effects of climate change on their gender transition surgeries or whatever it is this month. But the numbers don't lie. Humans as a species and the planet itself have both never had it better than what we do right now. And yes, both of those things can be true at once, the planet and people. The modern-day prophets of doom are saying that our cheap, abundant energy in the form of coal and gas are going to destroy the human race. But the opposite is true. Cheap, abundant energy has already saved the human race. We just forgot about it because we got used to it. We forgot what life used to be like before the harnessing of coal power in the form of the steam engine, which sparked the Industrial Revolution and quite literally saved the human race. My name's Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and yeah, this isn't quite what I normally do, but it's not that far off. So if you appreciate a bit of good news today, then please help me to keep the Topher Project going by buying me a coffee via the button at topherfield.net. And if you haven't had a look, then check out my books, DVDs, and merch at goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. So, I'm saying that cheap, abundant energy in the form of coal and oil has saved the human race. Okay then, saved us from what? Well, kind of saved us from everything. Let's start with something basic like death, specifically child mortality, which is the percentage of newborns who died before they reached the age of 5. Obviously, the further back in time you go, the less precise the data becomes, but we don't need it to be precise to know that the infant mortality rate before the Industrial Revolution was horrific. More than 1 in every 3 children born would not make it to their 5th birthday. It was common for families to have a dozen children or more because they had no contraception and no TV shows to waste their evenings on. And it was normal for 4 or 5 of those dozen children to die as children. Today, child mortality worldwide is below 4%, which is still high. But that's mostly because there are countries which haven't fully caught up with our standard of living here in Australia. Speaking of Australia, our child mortality rate since we started keeping records in the late 1800s has dropped from between 15 to 20% just 150 odd years ago down to 0.4%. That is good news. That is what progress looks like, and we see that progress in life expectancy as well. In the year 1800, no major region in the world had an average life expectancy of more than 40 years of age, and the global average was below 30. Now, it must be said that that was in part because infant mortality was so high. There's lots of people who did live into their 50s and even into their 60s, but so many died as children that that dragged the average down below 30 years of age globally. Now, well, globally, even taking into account the parts of the world that are still lagging behind, the average globally in 2023 was over 73 years of age. And since records began, the life expectancy in Australia has gone from less than 50 years of age, yeah, right here in Australia, to more than 80. The question has to be asked, why? Well, mostly it's...
Well, I think a lot of the things, though, that I'm not sure where he's going with this, but my assumption is that where he's going is he's going to be like, we are technologically advancing, or we have been technologically advancing since the industrial age due to coal, and things are looking positive when it comes to technology, when it comes to life expectancy, when it comes to child mortality. But what I would say is when records started isn't exactly when life started, right? And my perception on the way that the world isn't limited to the society that we have now. And I don't believe, like, there is this common perception within modern society that we are the most modern it's ever been. There has never been a society that can compete with us. It's just been a straight up curve, technology growing gradually up. But I certainly don't believe it. I think we've had ups and downs and ups and downs. And that's what, not history, because history does sort of, play to their version of the past. But I think just based on what you can see with your eyes, right? Certainly there's architecture from the olden days that is like we couldn't build even with the technology of today, right? And I'm not just talking about the pyramids, right? Just on average, when you look at the old buildings, even within your city, you'll find that they used different materials that are much stronger, and they survive a lot longer than the buildings of today. And so that's what I mean by, yes, we can say, okay, life mortality is going up, infant mortality is going down, life expectancy is going up. We can say that, but certainly those aren't the only measures. And even if they were, we're starting when records began instead of, overall the human timeline from the beginning till the end. And obviously there's reasons for that.
Sanitation, basic engineering and infrastructure, combined with medicine and an understanding of germ theory. Now, we might roll our eyes when our mothers tell us to wash our hands, but that really is life-saving advice when you view it in its full historical perspective. But actually, that infrastructure, the sanitation, the infrastructure, the medicine, all of that was made possible by energy. Because energy is work. And if you go back before the steam engine, all work had to be done, as in all energy had to be provided, either by human muscles or animal muscles, and they both have to be fed. The more work an animal could do, the bigger it tended to be, and the more it needed to be fed. So subsistence farming was the norm, working to make food so that you had the energy to work to make food, so that you had the energy to work to, etc. You get the idea. People today object to working a 40-hour week. But before coal-fired steam power, you worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, if you were lucky. We look back on the working conditions in early coal mines and in early steam-powered factories, and we say, how barbaric. But that was an improvement. People went and worked, looked for places like that by choice, because they were better off and their families were better off than they had been subsistence farming. That's how far we've come. That what used to be considered progress and opportunity now looks barbaric to us. Now, let's say the same kind of thing a bit of a different way. The percentage of the population which is now directly engaged in food production has dropped massively over the centuries. Many estimates claim that more than 80% of the world's people used to be primarily employed in food production. We don't have a lot of historical data on this. It's kind of anecdotal out of diaries and comments made in historical records, but we know that in the UK, for example, it was at least 55 to 60%. But keep in mind that even the people who were not primarily employed in food production would normally have kept their own chickens or veggie patches, and almost no one back then was growing no food at all. Everyone made food. Today, worldwide, there's still about 25% of the world's population directly employed in food growing, but that's again because there's a lot of countries that are yet to catch up with basic industrial aids like tractors and fertilizer and, energy. So their productivity is still incredibly low. But in Australia, where we produce vast amounts of food, just 3% of the population is directly involved in that food production, leaving 97% of the population free to do other things, secure in the knowledge that someone out there is making the food that we all need to eat.
I don't know why, but when I heard him say that just now, it really triggered my mind to think about AI and how AI is going to take up all these other roles. And they're probably going to be saying the same thing where AI freed us. AI freed us from all these other menial tasks. And I wonder what really those new roles are going to be. Because, in this particular case, people didn't work at the farms anymore, so then they worked in cities, they worked as lawyers, they worked as, real estate agents, and this whole other, like all these other activities needed to be completed within the cities that, attracted all this workforce. Now the question becomes, with AI, what roles are going to be there for them? Because supervising is basically getting taken over by AI, right? Like all the knowledge-based jobs seem to be getting replaced by AI. And so I wonder, what are they getting freed up to do? And Yuval Noah Harari, which is somebody, one of the people that often talks at the World Economic Forum about his predictions of the future. He seems to have mentioned over the past few videos that I've seen, that they're a bit worried about what they need to do about the humans. They're trying to figure it out. Right now, the only answer they have is to essentially just eat and play video games. Yeah, so as they move to other activities in other spaces for opportunity, where are they going to move this time? There is nothing to move to. So, interesting question.
And it's the free to do other things that has led directly to the incredible progress that we've seen in sanitation, infrastructure, and medicine, which has now saved so many lives. People living in poverty and barely surviving don't care about a sewage system. They're not building better roads or inventing new technologies or studying microbiology. They are surviving, hunting for their next meal. That's all they're doing. It's as we as a species were liberated from subsistence living by energy, specifically coal in the first instance, but oil later on. That's when we started to see real progress, because energy is work. And that energy meant that fewer human beings were needed to feed and clothe and house the human population. And more human beings began to turn their mind and effort and talents and energy to other things. And despite fewer human beings working in food production than ever before, we today are making more food per person than ever before in human history. And yes, to be clear, that's per person. So this already factors in the huge increase in the human population that we've seen in the last couple of hundred years as well. The supply of calories per person has increased by about 30% since the 1960s. Which is why famine and absolute poverty are at the lowest levels they've ever been in human history. the share of the world's population living in extreme poverty, which used to be above 90% if you go back far enough, has dropped from over 40% to under 10% in the last 35 years alone, even though we've added another 2.5 billion people to the human population in that time. What humans have accomplished, thanks to cheap energy, is truly extraordinary and is cause for celebration. Abundant and cheap coal and gas-powered energy is not going to kill us. It's already saved us. But
You know, being out in nature is not a very forgiving environment at all. And people that know that are usually quite grateful for whatever it is that they're provided. And it seems to be the case that we've become so detached from that we now see everything as bad. And maybe this is the good thing about today's episode, is Topher's trying to bring us back to basics, to make us appreciate what we have already achieved.
some people say, is it going to kill our planet? No. In fact, there's strong evidence for exactly the opposite. Firstly, there are people who claim that all this human progress, this increase in wealth and food abundance for our growing population, has caused us to deplete the globe's resources. But what's actually happening is that energy and technology are allowing us to do more with less, to be more productive using fewer inputs, less resources in the first place, as long as we have that all-important, cheap, abundant energy. It's a fact that globally the amount of land being used to feed the human population has now peaked and is declining, despite the fact that our population is still growing. So not only are we making more food per person than ever before, we're doing that not only with less land per person, but actually with just less land in total. Now, simultaneously, our planet is re-greening thanks in large part to increased atmospheric carbon dioxide, which has increased from 280 parts per million before the Industrial Revolution to over 420 parts per million today, which is a boon to plant life on Earth and not only improves growth rates, and just in case you weren't aware, according to the US Department of Agriculture, we're on track to set yet another new all-time record for global food production this year. So it does most certainly improve growth rates, but it also improves the water efficiency of plant growth, meaning that farmers are not only seeing record yields from crops, but they're doing it with no more water than what they used to need.
This is an amazing insight provided by Topher. For all those, that push all these environmental policies and say that we need to stop with all of this carbon. They want to start counting the carbon that we're producing and limiting our travel and all this. Actually, the planet thrives off of carbon, right? Like, you should have learned this in school, where, you take in oxygen, you breathe out carbon dioxide, the plant then takes that carbon dioxide and releases oxygen, right? This is a part of the cycle of the planet. And for some reason, we have felt, these climate czars have felt that humankind is now in charge of controlling the balance of this planet because it's not capable of balancing itself out, and we are just doing all this negative stuff to the planet. But they have no basis for saying that, actually, just based off of Topher's findings here as well.
But some people object. Isn't this all coming at the expense of all kinds of terrible climate disasters? Well, again, we've forgotten our history. Climate disaster deaths averaged per decade are the lowest they've been in, ever. And again, it was the abundance of energy which allowed better buildings, better air conditioning, flood mitigation works, and more, which have led to the historically low level of climate deaths that we see today. But actually, the climate disasters kind of aren't happening. Sea level rise continues at its steady, slow pace, not really causing any issues. Wildfire burned area is down. Global hurricanes and cyclones are steady or down. The Great Barrier Reef, long heralded as a canary in the climate coal mine, is doing better than ever over the last 5 years. The apocalypse? that we're supposed to be seeing as a result of us digging up and using all of this cheap, abundant energy, that apocalypse just isn't happening. And even the predictions of the terrible cost of climate change into the future are actually predictions of reduced growth in our wealth, not an actual decline in wealth from where we are today. So even if the prophets of doom are right and the missing disasters magically start to appear, all it will do is slow down the rate at which the world is getting better. It won't actually make the world worse. And that's according to them. The truth is, there's only one thing that's going to make the world worse if it can. And you guessed it, that's government. Government is genuinely the only force known to man that can drive us back to subsistence living and starvation with violent, brutish, and short lives. And we know that it can do that because that's exactly what it has done time and time again when government has been allowed to grow to the point that it plays God with people's lives. The USSR, Zimbabwe, China's Great Leap Forward, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba. The examples are tragically numerous. These are human tragedies that cost a combined total of somewhere between 100 million and 300 million lives in the last 120 years alone. Cheap, abundant energy is the greatest force for good in the world today. It has literally set the human race free from poverty, and that's why government hates it so much. Because all too often we see that government is the greatest force for evil, and it knows that people in poverty are much easier to control. So, as promised, this is a good news video. What the human race has accomplished in just 250 odd years is astonishing. And what the future holds for us is unimaginable wealth, health, lifestyle, and technology if we can stop the government from buggering it up for the rest of us. And that's why I do what I do. My name's Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and I help busy people like you to make sense of the nonsense that surrounds us. I am 100% viewer supported, and you can help me to keep the Topher Project going by buying me a coffee via the button at topherfield.net. And if you appreciate my perspective on the world, then check.
I don't think that, I tend to disagree with Topher a lot, and I agree with him sometimes. I'm finding that as of late, I'm agreeing with him more and more. And in this particular video, definitely so. As I mentioned in the video where I was reacting to Chris Boy, and he was saying, it's too late. Is it too late for Australia? My answer was quite similar to what Topher said here, which is essentially that I think that the future is going to be fine as long as we're willing to go up against the powers that be. Because the powers that be, they control everything through legislation. And what needs to happen is that legislation needs to change. And when that legislation changes, everything will change pretty much instantaneously, because the government determines how the country will move. If it puts tax subsidies into a particular sector, best believe that people will start investing in that sector. If they, start taxing the hell out of a sector, then best believe people will start to move out of that sector, right? Unless, of course, like when it comes to cigarettes and, criminal operations that see an opportunity to sell the products at a lower price. Because the government, again, has regulated the crap out of the market, making it impossible for it to, for people to afford the cigarettes at the price with the tax. So, yeah, I do agree. I think there is hope. Certainly there is hope. But it is not going to come easy. It requires us to really get together and work hard and be willing to sacrifice. Unlike Topher, well, he says everything is good if we don't allow the government to get involved. I would have sort of an opposite point of view. Same thing, but just like a chicken or an egg kind of thing. I think that we are absolutely headed for disaster unless we can stop the government from pushing us down that path, right? So my one, I think, is I like my one a bit better just because it puts the responsibility on us to sort of do something about it, as opposed to oh, we've got it all good. It's just stopping the government. I think, no, it's not all good. We're all headed in the wrong direction. We must get together. We must make a move and a change. And once that happens, then potentially it can be good. Anyway, so good news story, I suppose. What are your thoughts on Topher's good news story? Please like if you enjoyed the content today and subscribe for any future content updates.